Today, we're going to unlock one of the most influential spiritual texts ever written. But here's the twist. This isn't really a story about the text itself. It's about the secret history of how we even learn to understand it in the first place. You know, when you really boil it down, so much of the spiritual quest comes back to two massive questions. How should I live my life? And how can I get a handle on my own mind? These aren't just abstract ideas. They're incredibly personal, right? And this is that exact question, just phrased a bit more formally, asked 2,500 years ago by a disciple named Subhūti, directly to the Buddha. This single question is the spark that ignites one of the most important texts in all of Buddhism, the Diamond Sutra. Now, the Buddha's answer, it wasn't some simple checklist of do's and don'ts. It was a really complex, kind of paradoxical teaching that became a cornerstone of Mahayana Buddhism. But for a very long time, its wisdom was incredibly hard to get. For centuries, the sutra was like this amazing treasure chest, but nobody could find the key. Its ideas were so challenging, so mind-bending, that all its deepest secrets stayed locked away, just waiting for the right people to finally come along and figure out how to open it. And I mean, they waited a long time. We're talking nearly 1,000 years where the text was studied, for sure, but nobody really got it. So our story, the story of how it was finally unlocked, it really gets going way later, in the 4th century in the ancient region of Gandhara. All right, so let's meet our first hero in this story, a guy named Asanga. And he was a genius, no doubt about it. He came from the Brahmin caste, the absolute top of the social ladder in ancient India. He'd mastered all these other Buddhist schools of thought, but the Diamond Sutra, it just completely stumped him. He was totally captivated by it, but he just could not crack the code. So, after hitting a wall with just his intellect, Asanga tried something different. He went inward, and the story goes that his big breakthrough, well, it didn't come from a book. It came from somewhere else entirely. He went into this super deep meditation, and in that state, he's said to have traveled to celestial realm and met the future Buddha, Maitreya, face to face. And that's where he received the verses that finally revealed the sutra's true meaning. But, okay, getting this incredible mystical download is one thing. Now you have to convince people it's real. And this new insight was about to face its biggest test yet, from its toughest critic, Asanga's own brilliant and very skeptical younger brother. So this is Vasubandhu. And look, he wasn't just a little skeptical. He was a master in a rival school of thought. He'd literally written books attacking the very Mahayana ideas his brother was now all about. But then, Asanga shared what he'd learned, and it was so powerful, so convincing, that it caused this total 180 in Vasubandhu, a complete intellectual and spiritual flip. And this right here, this is the whole key to the story. You've got these two brothers, and they kind of represent two different ways of knowing, right? You have the mystic, who gets this incredible insight from a spiritual experience, and then you have the hardcore intellectual, the skeptic, who's won over by the sheer power of that insight. And when they put their minds together, their commentaries became the gold standard for understanding the Diamond Sutra for centuries. Okay, so what did they actually do? How did their work help everyday people read this thing? Well, if you take what they wrote and combine it with an even earlier way of breaking up the text, you end up with not one but 3 totally different keys for unlocking the sutra. And I love this because it shows you there are different layers to understanding it. The map analogy here is perfect. The first key gives you the basic layout, right? The names of the cities. The second key is like a topographical map. It shows you the mountains and valleys of the spiritual journey itself. And the third? That's your detailed guidebook for all the tricky spots, the confusing intersections where you might get lost. So let's look at key number 1. This one's the most straightforward. It's called the 32 divisions. You can basically think of these as chapters in a book. It just gives the whole thing a logical structure, a table of contents. It's actually the most common way you'll see the text printed today. All right, key number 2. This one comes from Asanga, our mystic. It's called the 18 abodes, and this is where the text really starts to come alive. Asanga didn't just see a book, he saw a map for a practitioner's journey. He connected different parts of the sutra to 18 specific stages or dwelling places that a person moves through on their path to enlightenment. It's a completely different way of looking at it. And that brings us to the third key from our converted skeptic, Vasubandhu. He called his framework the 27 Doubts, and this is so cool. He saw the sutra as this dynamic, living dialogue. He viewed it as a practical tool where the Buddha is masterfully cutting away 27 specific, subtle doubts as they pop up in his disciples' mind, which of course are the same exact doubts that pop up in our minds. Okay, so why do we care about all this history? Why go through all the trouble of learning about these keys? I mean, why not just read the words on the page and call it a day, right? Well, because what these frameworks really show us is that to truly understand something this deep, you need more than one lens. Just reading the 32 divisions, you get the story. But understanding Asanga's 18 abodes, that turns the story into a personal roadmap for your own practice. And engaging with Vasubandhu's 27 doubts, that makes the text a powerful tool for dealing with your own mental roadblocks. You really need all three to get the full picture. And that's the incredible legacy that Asanga and Vasubandhu left us. They taught us this absolutely vital lesson. The goal isn't just to know what the sutra says, it's to know how to use it. This thing isn't some dusty philosophical text you admire from afar. No, it's a practical guide. It's a map that's meant to be followed on a real lived journey. And that brings us right back to where we started, to that original question from Subhūti. So for you, for me, for all of us today, what does it really mean to master your own mind? And maybe even more importantly, what map are you using to find your way?